How are you?
Good. How you doing, Peter? Peter Mehlman, novelist, comedian, and Seinfeld writer.
In that order.
How long? How did you land a writing gig on Seinfeld, which you wrote for nearly the whole 9 seasons that it ran? Correct?
Yeah, most of it. Yeah, I left before the last season, and I wasn't there for the first season, which was only 4 episodes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna say that's one I watched. I watched from beginning to end when it was new. It was amazing. I was gonna ask if I was hoping you weren't in on that last episode because that was a rough one, but but every other episode was fantastic.
Oh well, there was some turkeys in there, but
Yeah.
it's it's hard to do 22 episodes in a season. It's everybody's finally realizing that if you do 10, you could actually have some good quality. But I mean, 22 is just a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I loved it. I loved every episode, and even that I've gone back and rewatched the final episode. I don't hate it anymore. But I remember when it was first on, it didn't feel like the other episodes. But yeah, how was it? Did you sit down in a group to write it, or did you just write a script and send it off to them?
Um, you mean originally or throughout the whole process?
Well, either way, like yeah, how did it start and how did it end?
Well, we never wrote as a group. We never had a writers' room like every other show. You were pretty much up to you to come. It was up to you to come up with ideas, and you would pitch your ideas to Larry and Jerry, and there were a lot of ideas you had to pitch because it got to the point where everybody had to have a story of the four main characters.
Yeah.
So. Larry and Jerry would say, "Oh, I love that idea. I don't like that idea,"
Wow.
and then you'd be off on your own to write it.
How did it come to you? Did it all come at once? Like you sat down and like it just flowed, or did you write it and then go back to it?
Unfortunately, it never happened the same way twice.
Wow.
Sometimes it was an unbelievable struggle, and then sometimes it was like a total breeze.
Wow.
Like the sponge episode. I just heard on the radio that the sponge birth control device was going off the market, and I heard it in my car, and I just thought to myself, God, if Elaine's a sponge user, she would probably try to buy up all the remaining ones, and if she got just a limited amount of sponges, that would, change her entire standards for who she slept with. So, like right then and there, I had like a whole story,
Yes.
a whole episode for Elaine's character.
She
And then
was.
other times, like with the implant episode with Terry Hatcher, I had a bunch of kind of completely unrelated funny scenes, and I somehow managed to put them together into a whole show. And at that point, that one worked out so well that I thought, well, this is the way I'll always do it. It'll work out great that way.
Yeah.
And it never worked out again.
So it's like, yeah, there's no given formula. Wow.
Yeah, and, I was kind of very new to this because before that I had, basically been a journalist, and I wasn't used to making up the world. I was used to reporting on what was actually happening. So, coaxing creativity out of myself was a process.
That's what I was going to say. How do you go from journalist to writing scripts for a sitcom?
Well, in some ways, I think it's an advantage because, I've lived a life outside of show business. So many shows are, like all their references are showbiz references all the time. Even you look at Saturday Night Live now, it's like 99% showbiz references.
Yeah. So you.
So, I had other life experiences, and, and I had lived a life in New York before I moved to Los Angeles. And so, being a journalist requires a certain amount of observational skills, so that was very helpful. And also I wrote for a lot of different publications, so even though I had, a fairly strong writing voice, one day I'd be writing for, Esquire or GQ, and the next day I might be writing for Mademoiselle or Glamour. So, those are magazines that are so different that, you would hold on to your own voice, but you would have to, alter it.
Have a different
for the
perspective.
publication. And that was, a big deal because, on Seinfeld, you had to alter it for Larry David.
Oh, yes. I was going to say, too, for each of those characters, though. Like, all 4 of those main characters were also so pronounced.
Yeah. I never really had much trouble as far as, dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Coming up with the stories and dialogue I was good at.
Nice.
Actually finishing up, and coming up with the whole story and ending it, those were the parts that were very difficult for me.
Wow. What script were you most proud of that you wrote?
I was really proud of The Sponge because, I loved when we kind of poked at our own liberalism. So, like when Kramer is, refusing to wear an AIDS ribbon, I just love that.
Yeah.
And I also loved Yada Yada because that happened in, that was the last script I wrote as a staff member. I left after that. And, at that point, 8 seasons in, the show had gotten, very big and kind of unwieldy. The stories were huge, like the Puerto Rican Day Parade, stuff like that, which were all episodes.
Yeah.
When they got so big and unwieldy like that, I wasn't into it. I was very loyal to Larry's original version of the show, which was, very small little slice of life stories. So Yada Yada was actually kind of a throwback. The stories were very small, and and it's always nice when you throw in something that ends up in the dictionary.
And yeah, you ended on a high note with that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
I actually wrote one the next season also when I wasn't even on the show anymore.
Oh.
The Backwoods episode I wrote with Dave Mandel.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
That was actually one of the easiest to write of all time. I mean, we would look at each other and say, God, we didn't even put any work into this.
That's the best kind of stuff when it just flows or it just happens naturally. That's amazing.
It's always when it comes fast, it's always better.
Yeah. Sometimes, like, I write little bits for the show, and, like, I have so many ideas coming in that I have 2, like, notepad files on my computer and, like, a notepad like with that I write in. So, like, it's just, like, they all come so fast, those ideas.
Well, writing that stuff down is, like, the most important thing you can do. Because use it.
Yeah, that's it.
You got to get it down on paper. Like, it's the most...
Yes.
I carried a pad with me at Seinfeld for, nonstop. I was, like, constantly, like, in the middle of dinner, just, like, interrupting conversations and just saying, excuse me 1 second, and, like, writing down something that somebody said. And everybody would go, what did you just write down?
Share it with the group.
On TV.
You were a millennial stuck on the phone before that was even a thing.
Yeah.
That's funny that you should just say that because I drove to Starbucks before and I just saw like every single person on the street was like glued to their phone. It just depressed me. It's so pathetic. I mean, even crossing the street, pick your head up.
I was just gonna say the crossing the street.
At every red light, somebody's honking because the person in the front is on the phone.
Yes. I just saw it yesterday. Yep, that's so true. And like you said, the crosswalks, like I think they lowered. Didn't in New York they put lights on the ground now because people are always looking at their phone.
My God, you shouldn't be catering to it.
Man.
That's it. You cater to them.
You know, I mean, this is like what we do as a society. We cater to like the biggest idiots on everything.
Yes. Yeah, it used
You know,
to be
I mean, if
survival.
you can't figure it out yourself in New York, especially where, you know, walking across the street is a sport.
It's a skill.
Oh yeah, it's an incredible skill. I mean, you know, I used to be great at it. Now I go back and I'm like, you know, a complete poser. But you know, I mean, and you know, even today I was like, I saw this commercial for a car, and there's this really pretty girl who holds up a balloon. And it's like it's not much bigger than the balloon you'd see at a kid's birthday party. And she starts flying over like rivers and mountains and things like that. And on the bottom it says, "Don't try this."
What?
I mean,
It's not possible.
God, why does you know how much money this country just blows on trying to set idiots straight? I mean, how could they?
Yeah, that's it.
Not to go on a rant or anything.
I love it. Yeah, everything has to be idiot-proof, just like we just said. Yeah, don't try
woman
this.
Floating above the earth, and her feet are brushing against the top of mountains, and they're telling you that you shouldn't do this at home.
I want to try it now. I want to go out there and do it, though.
We need to give Slambo a balloon right now, and we're going to see what happens.
We're going to have our intern do that, Peter.
Jay, I
You
can't
better
wait
get
to
some
try.
really high test helium.
Yes, yeah, where do you even get that? That's like, I feel like that's in, like, Area 51. I don't know. Peter, did you appear in any Seinfeld episodes as, like, a side character?
Did I appear?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, my voice was in one, and then I was, you know, on the subway episode, I was the one standing behind Elaine when she's like going, "Oh my God, this guy smells," and you know, and that was only because I happened to be working on another script and I was kind of stumped. And you know, when I was stumped, I would just like walk over to the stage to hang out for a while, and they needed somebody my height. You know, there was a crowded subway train. And, you know, I had to play a disgruntled subway rider, which was, you know, not a big problem for me. And, you know, in The Sponge, I also was one of the pharmacists when Elaine keeps, you know, going from pharmacy to pharmacy.
I thought so.
Looking for, you know, to see if she could buy up their sponges.
That was such
is
a
a
great
funny
episode. Yes. Such an amazing
Do you think there are any sitcoms around nowadays that are as good as Seinfeld?
You know, to tell you the truth, I don't watch any. I don't watch any comedies. I mean, it's not that I don't want to. It's just that nothing seems to like be jumping out at me that I'd want to watch.
I've gotten into a few.
You know, and it's hard to say as good. You know, like there are absolutely none that are comparable as far as you know, having characters who are kind of unlikable. And, you know, who'll screw each other over at the drop of a hat. You know, I mean, the show broke all the rules, you know, and to tell, you know, when I left Seinfeld and started, you know, developing shows for DreamWorks, I realized that, you know, the networks really hated Seinfeld, you know, because it broke all their rules. You know, it was very eye-opening. You know, I mean, they liked it as fans, but the fact that, you know, it just broke every single rule, you know, was really rough on them because, you know, they suddenly had nothing to say, you know, like, you know, the first time I had a table read for a new show, you know, they said to me about one of the characters, he seems a little glib. And I said, yeah, that's because I told him he should be glib. And it was, you know, like they were looking at me like, oh my God, you know. And I said, like, you know, when you decided to get into business with me, what did you think you were going to get?
Yeah, exactly. That was your realm. So yeah, you would be expecting to get that. I agree. Well, you're also Peter. Your novels. You have 2 out right now, correct? It Won't Always Be This Great and Mandela Was Late.
Mandela Was Late was actually a collection of articles that I had written in magazines. That was kind of a collection. That wasn't a novel.
Okay.
It Won't Always Be This Great was a novel, and I just finished another one, which will be coming out in the fall.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Hashtag me as well. What can you tell us about it?
It's basically about a Pulitzer Prize-winning sports writer at the Washington Post who makes one tiny little kind of tasteless, kind of sex-related joke, and somebody puts it on Instagram, and it goes viral. And over the next 24 hours, it's basically all the things that happen because of this one event, while he's trying to see whether he's going to actually be able to keep his job or be fired.
Yes.
So it all takes place basically over 24 hours. And, it's very much about the environment we're in right now.
I was just going to say that's very, very realistic in this day and age.
Yeah. I mean, he just makes one joke. He's talking about a soft NBA player, a guy who is very kind of physical contact phobic, and the guy gets hurt, and the Pulitzer Prize winning writer jokes to a bunch of other sports writers. He just says, God, how long is a guy usually out for a hysterectomy?
So now I'm curious back, obviously when you were writing Seinfeld, that was a very different time, but did you guys ever have to sit there and go, do you think this is going to offend people?
We weren't worried about offending people. We were, but for a while we were worried about whether NBC or Castle Rock, the production company, would just let us even do it. I remember reading the contest. It was funny because I just wrote an episode called The Virgin before that, and after we shot it, it went really well, and I was feeling really good about things. And then Larry gave me he wrote the contest, and I read it, and I went back into his office. I said, God, I'm so depressed. This is so good. And he goes, that's the best compliment you could give me, that you're totally depressed by it.
That was an amazing.
And then he just looked up at me and goes, so my big question here is, do you think they'll even let us do this?
Yes.
And I said, I don't know. It seems like you handled it really delicately. You never even say the word masturbation. I mean, I don't see what they can complain about.
Yeah.
And he goes, believe me, they could find something to complain about. And that was the first script. After the table read, that was the first script where there were absolutely no notes from anyone. No network notes, no production company notes, nothing. Everybody was just like, it's perfect.
Wow.
And it was.
Wow. Just going back to thinking about, you mentioning SNL and us mentioning the times we're in now. It was a couple years ago when Larry hosted SNL, and his opening monologue, it offended people, and he was just telling jokes, I think about a concentration camp or something. But it was like, if he was in a concentration camp, it was funny, but people were really bent out of shape about it.
Yeah, I think people are perfectly within their rights to say, I don't think that's funny.
Yes.
But to be offended by it, I mean, this is Larry David. What do you think you're going to get? This is what he does.
Yes.
If you think it's just unfunny material, that's fine. But you got to know that it's just he goes for the most uncomfortable joke you can find, you know? And I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
He did a Seinfeld script, probably the greatest, most perfect idea ever on Seinfeld was Jerry being caught making out during Schindler's List. I mean, it's the most brilliant idea because, first of all, it's just unbelievably funny on its surface, but also you have a whole story again. Jerry's caught making out during Schindler's List. Who would be offended by that? His parents. How would they find out? Well, they can't be in the movie theater, so somebody would have to drop a dime on them. Who would do that? Newman. Boom, you got a whole show.
Yes, only Newman. Yeah, like I agree to the point too, like making people uncomfortable but still laughing. That's a skill. That is definitely a skill.
Sometimes you go a little bit over the line. Well, that's what creativity is all about. Sometimes you might step over the line.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it feels like people are just sitting at home now waiting to be offended.
Yeah, I was just thinking it kind of, this climate we're in today, it's like people are a lot more selfish. And I think the offended people, they're just selfish. They're self-absorbed. And it's like, I have to make this about me somehow, turn myself into a victim. Or my mother was a Holocaust survivor or whatever, great-grandmother or whatever, some shit like that. Like, it's just a selfish thing.
Or just going to where they don't have winners and losers in sports. Like, so everyone's a winner. Yeah. So everyone is important. Like, we have to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, everybody is, like you say, everybody says, like, oh, this is more, this affects me deeper than it does you.
Yeah. Make it about yourself.
Sarah Silverman had this incredible bit about how, like, she about 9/11 and about she was going, look, I don't want to say like 9/11 was like worse for me than it was for you, but that was also, but it was worse for me because that was the day that I found out that the mocha latte was like 900 calories. It's funny because there are certain people still who can get away with things. Sarah Silverman is exactly the person who can get away with saying everything because A, she's unbelievably funny, B, she's really super smart, and C, she's got this persona that she does on stage of somebody who's kind of like arrogant and oblivious at the same time.
Yes.
I think she's an absolute genius. I mean, I really do.
Agree. Peter, you also do stand-up, correct?
I do. It's, it's almost like a hobby. It's almost like something I do for fun.
That's what I was wondering when I saw that. Like, I didn't know.
I started doing it like 3 years ago. So in those 3 years, I've now made just about $500.
That's impressive.
Once I took and once I got a parking ticket, and once I took an Uber to Laguna Beach. So I'm probably down to about $360.
Yeah, that'll knock a little off. But I was going to ask you, what is the craziest thing you've seen performing stand-up?
It's interesting. I don't see that many crazy things anymore because, they kind of like tell the audience in most clubs, like no heckling.
Yes.
Which, is almost like cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember going to comedy clubs in New York and, you'd see guys dealing with a heckler and, that was a skill unto itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, not that, heckling is kind of like what you were saying before where it's all about me again. It's somebody in the audience who's like, I'm not getting enough attention. Who's this guy?
Yeah.
I think the craziest thing that I find in stand-up is, it's very subtle, about how an entire audience one night can laugh like crazy at something, and then the next night an entire audience can like not respond at all to the exact same joke with the exact same delivery. It's like it really is just a phenomenon, you know, and like I don't really feel like I have anything to lose, so you know, whatever it is, either way, I kind of just, you know, go with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome to be at that point and be able to go either way with it.
I don't really, you know, I don't really acknowledge the existence of the audience anyway.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Like, I didn't know that they tell you at comedy clubs that you're not allowed to heckle.
Yeah.
Like, because that seems like, I mean, one, like, there's some great, like, comics who amazingly deal with, like, what was his face? We really got into him. Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks on one of his CDs, him dealing with a heckler was one of the funniest things in the world. And I feel like if you're going to do stand-up, like, that's a skill you should have, or at least be under fire to where you can develop that, especially in today's day and age where, like, it doesn't matter what you do because you're going to get heckled on the internet. You might just get heckled from a tweet, so you better, you know, be put under fire and learn how to develop that.
That's the irony of it all, is that, you know, I write op-ed pieces in newspapers sometimes, or articles, and, you know, sometimes I could write the fluffiest, you know, little jokey thing that doesn't take any, you know, radical stands on anything. It's just a bunch of, like, little light, feathery observations, and you get these vicious replies. I mean, this is disgusting. It's what snarky crap. I'll never, you know, at least now I
die in a house fire.
Buy his books. I mean, it's unbelievable. People are just.
They are.
They're. As we said, as my favorite line I ever had in Seinfeld was Jerry just going, "People, they're the worst."
I was gonna say delicate flowers. That's that's what they all are, Peter. Peter, we have to wrap this up.
I got one question before we wrap it up, though. Do you still hear from Larry or Jerry?
You know, I bump into Larry once in a while. You know, we live nearby, and you know, occasionally I email back with Jerry. When I just started doing stand-up, I emailed him a bunch of times, and he was, you know, he gave some interesting thoughts. You know, it was so funny because one of the first things he said is, "Your attitude on stage should be, I don't really want to be here, but I'm here, so I'll do this." And I said, "Yeah, I think I got that part down already."
You do. I can tell. If anyone does, you do, Peter. Thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure. Take care, guys.
It's been a blast. Where can everybody find you?
You mean like my home address?
Well, no.
If you want people to show up at your home, I mean, by all means.
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm all, you know. I'm not on Instagram. I think I am on Instagram.
What do they search to find you, like on Twitter or Facebook?
Peter Mehlman. Mehlman.
Yeah, just Peter Mehlman on Twitter.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Peter.
Take care, guys.
You too. Have a good one.
You too.